have one other person from Heifer. Oh, look at this.
Hello.
Look at us do this so smooth.
Yeah, well, because it's tech, I clicked the wrong link. So I was a little bit late joining. Sorry about that.
Oh, let me tell you, 1 minute is not late.
Good. You didn't even notice.
Nope,
Fantastic.
not at all. And look at me. I'm going to adjust this banner so it goes across the... Oh, we look so good, everyone. Welcome to this not yet entirely consumed by madness 14-hour live stream.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you.
And I'll let both of you sort of introduce... Oh, hold on. I will take one quick second while my chat... how about, would you guys please introduce yourselves? And I'm going to type a little bit. What I'm doing is updating the title of the stream so that people aren't confused when they come in.
Okay, sure.
And so go ahead, introduce yourselves, say a little bit about what you do at Heifer.
Jason, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Jason Woods, and I've been at Heifer for about 9 years. I started off in the programs area, but now I am a writer and editor for the organization. So we have a magazine that goes out called Worldbuilders, goes out 4 times a year, and we have a blog on our website. So I write and edit for both of those things.
And I am Annie Bergman-Jatina, and I am the Director of Global Communications here. So Jason is part of my team of writers and editors, and I oversee the magazine and the blog and our internal communications, and hopefully we've got a lot of folks from Heifer tuning in right now. So thank you so much for letting us do this. I've been at Heifer for next month will be 12 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So, honestly, I'm kind of here so that you guys can talk about things that I don't know about yet. I know the things that I love about Heifer, and so does my chat, so do my viewers. But surprising many of the people who hear me run my mouth all day long, I'm here to listen more than talk for once.
Oh gosh, Jason, that means we have to talk.
It's not what we're used to.
Yeah.
We'll work it out.
From what I understand, Jason, did you just get back from Bangladesh?
I was there a little bit ago. I was the person who traveled most recently there from our team, but it's been a couple of years now. And I got to visit the project for about a week and a half, and I was there for my birthday as well, which was kind of a wonderful treat. But I got to travel around and talk to our wonderful farmers and get to know them a little bit, and then write about their stories, which was a fantastic privilege.
And Jason was there about 3 years after I was there. So it was really cool because I was there right at the inception of the project. So what I saw, Jason then reported on essentially 3 years later. So the transformation, even just those 3 years was, we got to compare notes that way.
So this is something that it's hard for me to impress people on because I know that one of the things I struggle with in terms of talking about supporting Heifer is the same thing that you guys struggle with, is you're not a crisis charity. You know, and crisis charities, let's be honest, they're easy. Mm-hmm. There's a tsunami and you like, oh no, somebody's house got knocked over. We need to help. There's something in us as empathetic mammals. It's like, there's a problem, and our endocrine system and our parasympathetic nervous system lights up. All of our mirror neurons think, oh, that could be me. And we want to fix this crisis, this tornado, this fire, this sudden catastrophe. But what you do isn't that. And so the time frame is also really long. And I try to impress upon people that that's a really good thing, because the only way to make real change is to go in and do careful, deliberate, sustainable work. So could you talk a little bit, Anne, about like when you went and sort of like what you were setting up? And then Jason, could you talk a little bit about like what happened after that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I was there right after the project got underway. It was right after the inception. So there, I spoke with women farmers who um, had opted in to join, but really knew nothing about what to expect or what they'd be doing, or if change was actually going to be realized. So there were some incredibly difficult conversations that I had with these women and their husbands and their children. One that really sticks out to me is I spoke with a woman her name was Renuka, and I asked her this sort of, and I don't want to belittle it, but it was kind of a standard heifer question that, what do you think about now? What are your hopes and dreams for the future? And she looked at me and said, I've never dreamt about the future. That's not realistic for me. Wow. And I thought, okay, wow. So, she sat there for a little bit longer and decided that, she had two little boys and she definitely wanted their lives to be different than what she had experienced up to that point. So Jason's got an amazing story about a 12-year-old girl that he talked to, and that through interviewing the mother, the kind of back and forth that they were then able to have. And so it was in one of the similar groups. And so it went from these women really not being able to articulate what it could mean. It was like, yeah, we're going to go through this process, but we really don't know. And then, fast forward a couple of years to a conversation that Jason got to have.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. That was a very nice setup, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, so about 3 years later, I got to talk with a woman named Joy Knob, and we were sitting there with her and her 12-year-old daughter, Sadia. And Joy Knob has an older daughter and an older son, and neither of them had the opportunity to finish school. So they dropped out in the 6th to 8th grade kind of area. And what Joy Knob told me was before Heifer came to the area, probably 50% of the girls in the community went to school, and the rest of them couldn't afford to or had to help out with things with their family. And then after Heifer came, about 98 to 99% of the girls in that area went to school, which is just a huge difference. It's not hard data that we have, but that was what was told with me during that conversation. And so I was asking Joy Knob about what she hoped for her daughter's future, for Sadia's future. And she said she's a really great student, and she does such a good job, and she's so studious when she comes home. That's the first thing she does, is she gets all of her homework done, and she's going to make a great teacher someday. And then Sadia, who was sitting right next to her, said, police officer. And her mom kind of looked at her and looked at me, and she said, I hope my daughter becomes a police officer. That's what she wants to be someday.
Oh.
Which was really touching, that not only she's supporting her daughter's education and her daughter's recognizing her daughter's ability in school, but she also wants, what's in her daughter's heart for her life. So that was really special. And Sadia, she was 12 then. She's I would assume 14 now, and she said her favorite subject in school was English because it was pretty easy for her to read, and because it gave her connections to people internationally, and in that it would be good professionally someday. It'd be good for getting a job to have that language skill. So I thought that was a lot more insightful than when I was a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I hear that. So just to can you give us more? Because I know right now, because I'm assuming there's a lot of people here on the stream that maybe know about Heifer in general, or I talk about some of the specific pieces. But and it's I will admit I take it a step farther than, oh no, somebody's house got knocked over. We have to help this person who's struggling in the moment. That's crisis charity. I sort of talk about a lot of the pieces. I say, hey, what's great about goats? And then I talk about how animals produce sustainable income, and that lets people buy medicine and take control of their lives, specifically in Bangladesh. So before Heifer, now girls get to go to school, and people get to look forward to the future. What infrastructure exactly is being laid in there? And here we have the luxury. We have, multiple, a willing audience who will listen to, your long pitch. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it in a sound bite. And you can also talk about, because I know some people might say, really, they spend 6 months just talking to the people before they even start making a plan? Would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I feel like Jason's got some really interesting information about the actual infrastructure building that he saw going on. But yeah, that's, one of the tactics for us is we don't want to dictate to these people. We don't want to presume that we know what they need. So that's why having the conversation and having it at the local level, we are really locally built from the ground up. The staff in Bangladesh are Bangladeshi. They're not expats. They go out and speak to the women and the people in these communities and hear what they need, what they're seeing their neighbors excel at, what livestock seems to be working for others. And then add on to that the expertise, veterinary care, training, our values-based community development model that brings in all sorts of different aspects to really setting the stage for sustainability. We don't come in and drop something in and think, okay, great, good luck. We now know you can take care of an animal, a goat, for example. But so, what I was there to see was the formation of these self-help groups, these women coming together and opting in to the program. I was looking back at my notes from my trip, and what I thought was interesting was the level of trust that the women extended to us. I have a number of anecdotes from these women who said their husband didn't want them to join. Heifer sounded like a scam.
Oh, wow.
And there was one woman, the first woman I spoke to, had a lot of women drop out at the urging of their husbands because it didn't seem real. It was going to take too long, that kind of thing. And she went around door to door, knocked on every single woman's door and said, you got to come back. It's going to be real. We're going to do this. And we followed up with this woman, and she is an incredible entrepreneur on her own. She's running a sewing business. She's got cows. She's got goats. It's the whole 9 yards. And she was really the catalyst in this community for that change. So yeah, it is a tougher sell in that regard that, we know that true lasting change doesn't happen overnight. We have to have all of that time and all of those trainings so that the change can be internalized first and then manifest outward and see the ripple effects happen through the community.
So I'm going to hit you with a couple of questions that I'm trying to sort of listen to this with fresh ears as if I hadn't sort of been steeped in Heifer for the last decade. Because truthfully, over the years, I end up with weird specialist knowledge of pieces of Heifer. And it's easy for me to forget that there's big swaths of Heifer that I don't understand because things have changed over the years. But one thing that I'll say is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I'll probably pull some from the chat as well. I'll say, and I'm going to come at this a little bit how about this? I'm going to come at this kind of like a dude. And I'm going to kind of trying to pick holes in your coat
Sure.
so that you can sort of respond and let me know that my assumption is probably not the right one. You used the term values-based development. Does that mean that you go into these communities and you bring a bunch of Western suppositions, and isn't that really bad for their culture? Do you try to sort of impose Christianity on them or something like that? Isn't that really disruptive? That's a softball.
So when we start to work with the community, part of this 6 months of having meetings is to learn what the values are of the community. And so we want to promote the values of the people who are working with us in the Heifer Project, and come together to find out what shared values that community already has and what values that community would like to build. And so it's a partnership.
Oh, so that's discovering their values?
Heifer also has a set of values, but we don't impose those. It's part of our training. Like, for example, I'll throw one out there, is spirituality. You mentioned Christianity and Western religion. So we are not a religious organization. We were founded by the Church of the Brethren, but we do not have ties to that anymore. So spirituality is really all encompassing. And that's where, that's a Heifer value that is widely applicable to no matter where our projects are.
So respecting spirituality in however it manifests?
Absolutely.
Oh, I dig that. Also, we have a question in the chat, but also somebody, a delightful human being named Travis Chase, just dropped $500.
All right. Wow.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the team page.
Thank you.
Good job, Travis. Not only do you get a bunch of chances to win cool stuff, but that will do good work in Bangladesh. Now, I know what I can break $500 down into. I don't know if you guys do the same thing in your head. When you say like, oh, if somebody's like, if I were to give you $500, what would you do with it? Would you each, do you even think of it like that? Or are you very like long-term? Because like, I think goat, I think wells. Do you have sort of a thing that you focus on in terms of like monetary value and what it equates to in a sort of a tangible sense? Because I could see that not being so much of your jam because you're in it for like years.
And I think also it sort of depends on the context too, and the area where we're working. So I think that's not necessarily how I break it down in my head. I don't know about you, Amy.
Yeah, it's hard. Like you, I think it's being in the heifer world. It is easy to immediately think like that's a heifer, But at the same time, we do see a lot of the back end work on these projects and what that money could mean. In a whole host of respects. So I don't know that I really break it down that way either. It's just, it goes so far. It really does. That's not a platitude.
Right.
It really does.
Well, and this actually can tie into this other question that came up here. Somebody said, how does Heifer recruit locals with the skill sets they need to run their projects?
Yeah, it's a lot like recruitment in the United States, honestly. It's a search for qualified staff in country, and there's no shortage, really. We tend to have country offices located in capital cities, so that it's a metropolitan hub, and people come in from all over the country to those places. And it's a process that just like anybody applying for a job, even in Little Rock would go through. I don't know if that really answers the question, but we intend on, we are very intentional about having local people and with the knowledge of the country, the knowledge of the climate, the knowledge of the terrain, and all of that plays into it.
We also tend to work in places where agriculture is really important to the economy, and so countries where agriculture is really important tend to have a lot of agriculture experts.
And I know, like, way back in the day, because Heifer's been doing this a long time, you mentioned, we hire locals, it's not all expats. I think, like, more back in the past, it was more like people going over and doing the work. And slowly Heifer has sort of evolved and realized, do you work mostly with people over there? I have some guesses and some knowledge, but why not a bunch of expats over there? Like, don't you know the best way? Why aren't you over there doing it all? Again, softball question.
Jason, it looked like, I didn't want to cut you off. It looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, sure. We hire locals because they're familiar with the context. They know what's going on where they live, and they're the experts in the field.
Yeah. You're right, though. We have evolved that way. And it's, it's taken a lot of, we learn as we go. It's a learning process. We have a facility in Arkansas that was a holding facility for livestock at one point. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, it became pretty clear that, livestock suited to the local context, the local climate, was going to be more successful. So that's just one example of how we've evolved in that regard. And, not to mention the resources it takes to ship livestock, that plays into it. We try to be sustainable in every sense of that word. So
that's something that I've really enjoyed learning about Heifer is not only, I mean, it started out like good-hearted and strong, and then like, it's like, whoop, hold on. Why are we raising all these animals here and then shipping them all the way over there? But like, I have such admiration for an organization. I mean, because that's not a small enterprise. That was like, wasn't it like thousands of acres in Arkansas? And then you must have had like an entire supply lines and freighters and everything. You have that entire machinery built to do this thing. And then as an organization to say, this isn't the best, and to dismantle it and do it a different way, that is not done. That is truly remarkable. And that's one of the reasons that I back Heifer is they're doing their best, they're doing it smart, but they're not convinced that they have everything figured out yet. And they're always looking for a better way.
Yeah, we're learning better ways all the time. Absolutely. And we did, a lot of our history is we are very lucky to have incredible partners. At our inception, we were brought under the wing of the UN and their relief program. So we were able to use those kinds of boats to ship some of the livestock to Europe after World War II. So there have been instances like that. So it's not like we've had to just completely abandon things in that respect. But again, it has been a learning process, and like what one species maybe doesn't do as well, and we've had to learn those hard lessons, and we own them, absolutely.
And that's the other thing is like, I never want to turn my charity fundraising into effectively charity bashing. I want to campaign for Heifer, not against other charities. But there's a lot of like, I know so much dirt on some of these other charities where they've made some real bad choices and it's led to real catastrophic things. And there's never been admission of like and as a matter of fact, a lot of it ends up sort of swept under the rug because they don't want to damage their reputation. And those mistakes that get made just fester and get worse and worse because they don't own it. And so again, I really admire that aspect of what you guys do at Heifer. Tara actually stepped in here and asked the question just as you were answering it. Have you been able to see the benefits from switching away from the sort of cattle stock that we see in the U.S. to animals like water buffalo, more native over to the place? Have there been like tangible, trackable improvements dealing more with like local stock?
Yes.
Yeah, I think local animals generally tend to be better suited for the environment and healthier in that particular environment.
Yeah, we do have stories about. I'm not going to be able to pull them from every place, but instances where Cambodia, for example, backyard chicken production in Cambodia, the local breed of chicken fetches far more money. People like the taste better. Oh. And so, where we were helping in some regard to maybe improve some of the breeds, we took a step back and said, wait a second, if people are paying more and like the taste of this kind of chicken better, then why aren't we saying to our farmers, like, absolutely, that if, that's your local knowledge, that's your local context, we will help you in this regard then, So yeah, there are actual examples of that. There have been cases where in Eastern Europe, where war has livestock was decimated in war. So we've had to work with partners to bring in species, that are not unfamiliar to that place, but we've just had to restock in some instances. We've also seen local animals that maybe don't produce as well, like milk, and we help farmers figure out if there's like a crossbreeding program that would help them increase their milk yields. So there have been a number of instances like that where again, it's really all about the local context and what makes the most sense for the farmer and what they're going to get the best product and money from.
And I can't stress this enough, everybody. This is part of the reason, like, doing good work takes a long time. Like, if these guys just had a checklist and a cookie cutter process, they could, be driving through the countryside, hucking goats out of the back of a truck, for a much lower price point. But that means that, you wouldn't have local people trained up to act as competent vets for these animals. You wouldn't have the knowledge in the community of how to, like, have a good breeding pool for these animals and how to make sure that you're not inbreeding your animals in an unproductive way, or and again, exploring potential useful local crossbreeds. That's incredibly complex, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of investigation. And if you rush it, you screw it up. And so the fact that Heifer, again, there are other animal donation charities, there's other agricultural charities, but my jam is be careful, do it as best you can, and hopefully you make something that lasts forever. And that's, again, part of the reason that Heifer is really close to my heart. You were about to say?
Well, yeah, thank you. We appreciate that. And I like the point that you brought up earlier about the infrastructure. And one of the ways I think about it is that we're building a foundation, right? And we want to build on top of that and then keep building on top of that. So we start with the trainings, good animal management, good business training, and a family receives a goat, and that goat becomes more goats, and that helps with nutrition, it helps with income, it helps keep girls like Sadia in school. And then the family becomes kind of a small business owner, and it grows and grows. It's good for the family, good for the community, but it all takes time, like you were saying.
So why do you say good for the community? How does that one thing benefit the community?
So one of the effects of some families being involved in the project is that people see that success and they want to replicate it. And so they may request to join the Heifer Project, or they may get the knowledge that people who have joined a Heifer Project are willing to share with them and then replicate that on their own. We were talking earlier about in the community where Joinab lives and Sadia lives, almost all of the girls in that community are going to school now, where it was 50% before. During the process of discussing all of those values and the trainings, sometimes sensitive subjects like domestic abuse come up, and that's obviously taken very seriously. And in one of the communities in Bangladesh, the women there were telling me that it was something that was very prevalent. It was more common than not before the Heifer Project came in. And now it's almost unheard of because it was something that the community really wrestled with through the project. And talked about their values as a community, and for that community has been very successful. So there are social implications, there are economic implications, and it spreads because one of our other values is passing on the gift. So that's not only actual resources like a goat, but knowledge and sharing and success.
That is amazing. I've never heard that angle of it before, especially that domestic abuse thing. Is it just that, like, people started talking and the community started talking, and like you mentioned, like, these women's co-ops and self-help groups? Was it sort of like everyone kind of got together, and once it was out in the open, like how exactly did that lead to a lessening of a domestic abuse?
So in this particular community, and in a lot of communities in Bangladesh and other places in the world, the women in that community were isolated. And so in some cases, they wouldn't really leave the house. They didn't have leadership roles. They wouldn't talk to other women or really men in the community. And once they start being involved in the project, they're talking with each other, they're talking with men in the community, they're talking with government officials, they're becoming small business people. And not only are people starting to see that they're good leaders, good entrepreneurs, but they're starting to have that confidence in themselves and realize that they can push for what they know is important and what they think is right. And so that's kind of where it starts, and that's part of the power of a cooperative. So it's not just one individual voice, it's a group of voices. And once you hear the group talking with one voice, it can be really powerful.
It's harder to diminish multiple voices at that point. Yeah.
Well,
and we actually do have some data that shows what we call the spillover effects. So for every one farmer, 5 people are touched in a social network that way that have the spillover effects from one person being involved in a heifer project. So it really does spread.
That's cool. And it's very easy to control a bunch of people if they are all relatively isolated, whether you're doing that as an entity or whether the culture is sort of controlling them. But again, that's why in one of the things I see or I hear about and I talk about over in the Western community, if an employer makes sure that employees don't discuss their wages, it effectively isolates those employees in terms, but if everybody gets together and talks about what they actually earn, that is never a detriment to the workers. It's always, because if you're afraid to share how much you earn, you don't know if you might be getting taken advantage of by the company. You don't know what your labor is worth. The fact that translates into domestic abuse, that's amazing. Now, it's weird to follow off the heels of that, but I'm going to put my dude hat on again here. And you're you're talking a lot about girls going to school. You're talking a lot about women farmers. Aren't there boys that need to go to school? Aren't there guy farmers? Why aren't you helping them?
Sure.
Come at me.
Well, what we know, and this is it's not just anecdotal because we do see it, but statistically, it's known that if you invest in a woman, she reinvests about 90% of whatever you invest in her back into her family and her community. So we make a concerted effort to work with women knowing that fact, but that doesn't exclude the men or the boys in that community. Absolutely not. It's just culturally, as Jason was touching on, in a lot of the places where we do work, women are marginalized, women are disenfranchised, and that carries on into the next generation of girls and women. So it's just that they haven't been given the same opportunities as men, and this is a door opening to a new opportunity, so that community change really then does happen because of what you give a woman, she will then reinvest. So it does trickle down to the boys and the men for sure.
I know that I've seen some of the interviews where the wife is my husband now listens to me. He didn't think that this was a good idea. He told me that I shouldn't go. It was a waste of my time. But now, now I make more money than him and he has to listen to me and it's pretty nice. And I've seen different versions of that interview. And sometimes, to the guy's credit, he's like, I was wrong. He was like, I was wrong. And this is great. And now we have money and, having to respect and listen to my wife is a small price to pay for success and prosperity, I suppose. Now, you gave half of a set of statistics that I love. It's if you give a woman, or like $1, she effectively reinvests 90% of it into the community and her family. Do you happen to know the corresponding piece? Like if you give a guy $1?
Oh, come on. I didn't know this was going to be a quiz.
Well, I'm curious because
Sure, I knew it at some point, but right now off the top of my head, no.
what I remember is 36 cents.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was going to say 40.
Now I won't forget it.
Like, yeah, dudes, we have some stuff going for us, but in many respects, we're not great. Whether it be cultural wiring or some sort of genetic predisposition, there is a reason that Heifer works with women. It's because it has a bigger effect in these communities. And part of that, exactly like she said, it's that it's sort of in the same way that right now, why do I raise money for Heifer instead of, say, cancer research? You know, both my parents died of lung cancer. If I was going to Batman it up, I'd be like, oh, cancer killed my parents. I'm going to take out cancer and I'm going to wear a suit because this is all about me. I could raise $1 million for cancer research and it might not save a single life. And that's just sort of the hard economic reality of the situation. Like $1 million is not a lot of money in terms of promoting groundbreaking cancer research. However, the reason I support Heifer is because, like, I might not be able to stop someone dying of cancer. I can stop someone dying of hunger. That is extant technology, and it is called a chicken. And it's just a matter of getting a chicken to a place at the right time and teaching someone how to do chicken, which again, we figured that out real good for the most part. And similarly, you know, you could help out people who are fairly successful and doing okay. But if you really want to look to make a change, you look to the people who need the most help. And in a lot of these cultures, if anybody doesn't go to school in the family, it's going to be the little girl. If anybody is not having productive work, education, power, if anyone's not being respected, a lot of it, because of cultural forces, it's the women. And so in the same way, putting resources into those people and lifting them up is actually easier just due to a power differential that's in play. And truthfully, it does wonders for everyone in the community because it improves the economy. It improves the food available. When you hire people that are local, that money goes into the community. It pays people in the community, and then those people have jobs locally. The same with using local animals. Those local animals get bought in the community, and then that money stays in the community. So again, it's such an efficient, tight system that you guys have developed over the years. And I'm going to briefly take a quick commercial break from our discussion to talk directly to the people in the chat to say, hey, everybody, if you are watching this and you're like, wow, I had no idea how great Heifer was, well, I'm so glad. That's the reason I wanted to have this discussion and bring in people with more direct experience and expertise and who can speak with an authority that I will never possess. However, if you want to be a part of this, one thing you can do, help spread the word about the stream, help spread the word about the fundraiser. And I mean, you could do that on social media, but what I really encourage people to think about, if you've already donated, you kicked in some money, you want to make the world a better place, great. If you're tapped, you're strapped, it's the holidays, it's the end of the year, I understand. But maybe rather than a retweet, although I would love a retweet, if you can think of one person who you think would dig this, reach out to that one person specifically and say, hey, you're into farming and stuff, right? Didn't you kind of grow up on a farm? There's a place that helps farmers all over the world. And for $30 or $40, you can really make a huge impact in someone's life. I've already kicked in some money, but do you want to do that? And maybe you also win some books and games and stuff. Or if you have a friend who maybe is kind of indifferent to positive about charity and feeding people, but they reel into a Wormwood gaming table, handcrafted, American made, black walnut, this beautiful artisanal piece of furniture that I've coveted for years, this $10,000 gaming table, so beautiful. You can choose the color of the felt. It has a play area that there's a crank. It will lower down. You're playing a game, takes longer than you expected. It's dinner time. You crank it down. It's a recessed area. Then you put the top of the table on. You eat dinner like you're a grown-up. And then your game is safe and you don't have to stop it halfway through. Who am I kidding? None of us are grown-ups. Don't know if I'll ever feel like a grown-up. But for every $10 you donate anywhere in the fundraiser, you can win books, games, that table, a cruise for 2 on the Joko cruise. It's worth thousands of dollars. A nice balcony cabin. I will be there performing along with a bunch of other comedians and musicians. I went on the Joko cruise and it changed my life because I made friends that I will have forever. All of these things you can win while making the world a better place. And the last thing, here's the third thing. It always comes in threes. The third thing that I will tell you is, if you're like me and you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you know that there's big swaths of the world that are just a horrible mess. And sometimes it's hard to move through the world at all because you're constantly confronted with how bad things are on such a big scale. And if you're like me, you feel hopeless a lot and you feel helpless a lot and you wish you could change some things, and you know that the climate is out of control, and you know that politics is like a trash fire in a tire fire. And you wish you could do something and you don't know what to do. I can't help you with that. That sucks. We're all steeping in it. But here's something that I am offering you. You can come in. If you donate $120, that is enough to provide the tools, education, training, materials to give a family a goat. Now, and again, we've talked about this is a lot of research, a lot of education, boots on the ground, people getting jobs, and someone being trained up to take care of a goat. And also there'll be a vet around, and also people learn how to make cheese and butter. Maybe if there's enough goats, eventually Heifer goes in and works with them and they make a dairy in the area so people have a place to take the milk. And then maybe once there's a dairy, Heifer goes in again and says, hey, dairy, wouldn't it be cool if all the children who go to school here got some milk every day? And so then there's a place for the milk to go, and kids get milk, and families make money, and everyone has meaningful, purposeful work to do that improves their lives and the people around them. That you can have a part of. And if you donate to the charity, you might win something. Maybe not. The odds are pretty good. We have good odds here. We've given away a lot of stuff. What you will get, and this I guarantee, you hit this page, you donate some money, and you will feel good, because you will know when you try to go to sleep tonight that there is a child who will get to go to sleep not hungry, and there will be parents who get to go to sleep not afraid of what the next day will bring. Can you imagine being a parent not knowing how you will provide for your child? I can imagine, and I actively try not to because it would ruin me to be in that state with my boys. We can't fix the world. World's too big. But you can come in and help me fix a piece of it at a time, a family at a time, a child at a time, a chicken at a time, bees at a time, clean water at a time. Come in and feel it, people. I guarantee. The first time you do it, you'll feel like $1 million. Trust me. And you know what? If you donate and you don't feel good, tell me. I'll give you your money back. Pat Rothfuss guarantee. There's my pitch. That one felt pretty good too. You can tell it's early in the stream. Somebody do a mark of that. Maybe we'll clip that and use that promotionally later. Sorry for going on a little bit there, folks.
That was great.
It was great. I mean, I donate out of each paycheck, and I'm like, okay, sign me up. Yes. More money.
I love the fact that you donate out of your paycheck, even though you work there.
Oh yeah. I believe in it.
In the tech community, I think that's referred a little bit to like eating your own dog food. That can't be the expression. That's not it. See, I was really articulate for a while, and now I'm having a stroke. We've got about 10 minutes left with these lovely people who have generously donated their time. I'm going to say to the chat, those of you that are donating, focus on that because that's important. But if anyone has any specific questions, hit me now. I'll share this with them, and they'll do their best to answer. Okay, I was correct. It is called dog fooding. I didn't make that up or have a weird dream. It is called eating your own dog food. That's the saying. That's a terrible saying. Why would anyone make that saying?
It's the first time I've heard it. But
Same.
Yeah.
I think it is kind of exclusive to the tech industry. When Google Plus failed, it's sort of like everyone who was working on Google Plus was on Facebook. And so it's like, what does it say if the product you're making you are not using? So, and I tell you, it sticks in the mind.
Yes, it does.
There was a question here. Somebody says, has Heifer been steadily expanding? Are there areas you're looking to help more in the future?
That's a sort of a yes and no question. We are in 21 countries currently. We have been in more than 100 countries since our inception. So what we look for really is areas with significant need and where we know that we can do the most good. So it's a bit of a we are looking to move into new areas all the time. If there's a place that aligns with the work that we're doing, the agricultural work, the value chain work, certainly that all of that stuff is on the table. We just, for example, opened an office in Ethiopia. We did work in Ethiopia in the past, and we are going to resume work there. And project work will begin in 2020. So it depends on scenarios, really. Our footprint was significantly larger in terms of geography in years past, but now we seek to work with a minimum of 1,000 families in a project so that the scale of our reach is broader and wider, and the number of families that we're helping is going up instead of working in smaller pockets. So we want to have more widespread impact where we are.
That's cool. As somebody who stretched himself too thin and tried to do too many things, and therefore you do a lot of them not as good as you'd like, I respect an organization that decided to focus and tighten up. Somebody said here, I've heard some great success stories about countries like Latvia and Estonia, which even some EU people may not realize were in need of aid. People typically think of Africa or Asia. Could you perhaps tell us some interesting or surprising places where Heifer operates? I can mention one, Appalachia. It's not always all over the world, but not here in the U.S. because everything's fine in the U.S. Places in Appalachia, there's places where there's a ton of farmers who are hungry. And people who can't get access to good food surrounded by farmers that are hungry, which is an insane situation that's brought about by corporate farm structure. And I know Heifer has gone into those areas and said, hey, you produce food. Why not produce it for the local schools? Let's put you in contact with each other. You make money, the school gets better food, and help organize co-ops and how to raise organic vegetables that they can sell instead of trying to raise corn for a nickel a bushel. So I know Appalachia, Heifer does work in the U.S. as well.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to add, this year was our 75th anniversary as an organization, and so we've been going into the archives and looking at a lot of the different places where maybe we still work, but also we worked in the past, and that it's just been interesting. We used to work in a lot of different countries, but we started off we worked with a lot in Germany. We worked with German refugees in the United States throughout our history. We worked in a lot of different places.
Korea, Egypt.
Egypt.
Yeah, Jason wrote about some of the work that we did in Egypt, and that's not current. The Estonia and Latvia were referenced, but the former Soviet Union, the multiple countries that broke, when the Soviet Union broke up, we've been all through that region of the world that I feel like doesn't get a lot of recognition a lot of times. I did get to go to Kosovo when we still worked there. That was an amazing trip. So yeah, it's more than 100 countries. So
yeah, Heifer has been all over the place. We've got just a few minutes left, and I'm going to let you go a little bit early so I can sort of regroup and prepare for the next hour. I got to tell you, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate the work you do. Looks like somebody just dropped $1,000 on the team page, which is a delight and warms my bitter old heart.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And what I'm going to do quickly on my own page here is I want to refresh and see. The fundraiser is creeping up on $800,000.
Wow.
I think that's readily achievable by the end of the day. So the last thing I might say is just sort of open season now. Is there anything that you like, if you're like, ooh, if I get to go talk on the stream, I want to make sure I mention open door. Assume that I asked you an appropriate question and you can step in and say whatever it is you'd like to say. Is there anything in particular that you love about Heifer that you don't feel gets enough attention, or that you'd like to just sort of shine a light on? Anything like that?
Jason, you first.
Okay. We covered a lot of the things that I really love about the organization. I love that we work in partnership with people. And so we don't want to go into community and say, okay, this is the best thing to do. You should do this. We go into a community and it's kind of like joint problem solving. So we say, okay, what's going on here? Where are we? Where do we want to be? And everybody works together to reach that goal and to do it in a way that lasts. So that when we're gone, not only the success for the families that we worked with continues, but they can also continue to teach their neighbors and family members what they learned so that other people can be successful too. So it grows and it spreads. And I just really appreciate that about the organization.
Yeah, I gave myself, this is just a little bit of personal history, but when I moved to Little Rock, I gave myself 2 years here. And that was almost 15 years ago. And it's because I work at Heifer, honestly. It's an incredible organization. This community, I've been at Heifer long enough to see Worldbuilders become what it is. And it's truly humbling every year. And so this was just as much of a treat for us to be on the stream as you said, got to talk to us. But just thank you to everybody who's listening and who has ever participated, and to you, Pat. It's just incredible what you guys are able to do, and we sincerely appreciate it. And this organization is the work we do, I believe in 100%, and it's changing things. It really is. So thank you again.
It is. Thank you guys. to chime in, one of my friends and fellow author Mike Cole, one of the things he talked, I mean, it's interesting when I bring in somebody and I'm like, hey, want to help us do a fundraiser? And he's like, let me tell you why Heifer is cool. And I'm like, and because Mike has worked in the military, and he's worked in military intelligence, and he's like, Heifer is great because a lot of these other relief agencies, they work in unstable regions. And he goes, a lot of that support never gets to the people who, it is supposed to go to. He's like, he goes, the other thing is Heifer focuses on education. And like somebody might steal a truck full of rice, but you can't steal education, And he goes, that's why they are fighting the winning fight, the long-term sustainable improvement. And I know somebody said here, it was one of the great questions that I don't want to miss. It came up a couple of times. They said, what happens if there is a disaster in one of the areas you work in?
Oh, yeah.
And what I'll say briefly is I know many stories because all of the people who work with Heifer have learned to work together. And I know sometimes a disaster strikes a community, but nearby, like you say, now you're doing more work in the area. So a disaster strikes one community, and then there are nearby towns who immediately rush to their aid. Because everyone in those towns are like, oh, this is awful. I'm so sorry. But you know what? You need to get started. And they're like, yep. And he goes, here's chickens, and, and then they already know how to support each other. And they sort of do because of the infrastructure and the communication networks that have been built up. So I kind of maybe stepped on your ability to answer that question.
No, that's what we have a whole community managed disaster risk reduction strategy in the countries where we know that are prone to natural disasters. So it's part of the training that goes into project work. And it depending on geography, what that is, it could be typhoons, could be volcanic eruptions, earthquakes. But we've also seen, just to add on to what you were just saying, we have seen communities who were hit by, for example, the typhoon in the Philippines. When the earthquake in Nepal happened, they pulled resources and sent money to Nepal.
Wow.
So I mean, it's just incredible. It really is. So yes, we do a lot of work when disasters do strike, and we do work with the community to be resilient to those disasters. But it's the support that comes from around and what they already know how to do is remarkable as well.
That's so cool. I did not know, but of course you said it and I'm like, of course they do. Of course, if you're in an area that has a threat of certain type, of course they would involve this in the training and the preparation to make, rather than go in and clean up messes, you help people avoid the messes in the first place or be ready for them.
But we also do go in and help clean up as well. Yeah, absolutely. We can mobilize support that way. So.
Guys, thank you so much. I love you both. I love the work you do. I really appreciate you taking your precious time and coming and being available to us.
The feeling is mutual.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool.
Glad to be part of it.
I'll see you before too long.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.